Hey everyone, it's Paul Bertorelli reporting for AvWeb. This week, I'm sure you saw the dramatic flybys, a combination flybys of the Blue Angels and the Thunderbirds to honor healthcare workers. And looking at that footage, I'm sure you wondered, well, what's going on there? So I've got Richard McSpadden with us. Richard is head of the AOPA, Aviation Safety Institute. Before that, he was a commander of the Thunderbirds. So Richard, you've seen that footage. Tell us what's going on there. What kind of formations are they flying there? And they look pretty complicated.
Yeah, those are just fantastic formations, aren't they? And they were so inspirational to see. I love seeing the teams come together for that effort. They're challenging formations. They're called delta formations when you pull the six ship together. And so what you have is the diamond formation, which is the lead, two wingmen, and a slot. And that core entity is very used to flying together. And then the solos join on either side of the formation to make it the six-ship delta. So both teams are in a six-ship delta, and they would swap leads throughout. So I think the Thunderbirds led the New York City and Northeast flyby. I think the Blue Angels led the DC area flyby. So what that means is leading a delta formation is in itself cumbersome. You just have to roll and move painfully slow, because if you think about it, the outriggers are once removed. So they've got to see what the wingmen inside of them do and react to that. And it's helpful for everybody to be able to anticipate. And so as the lead of that, to lead your delta formation while you're flying in a formation position off another delta is pretty challenging. And just from the looks of that video, it's spectacular. They just, both teams did it so well.
And how do they brief and set up such a thing?
Yeah, extensively, as you might imagine. So they'll go over the route extensively and they take it, Paul, from the very beginning from the brief of how they're going to step out, who's going to crank first, who's going to taxi out first. As they take off, where's the rejoin going to happen, in what sequence? And they'll anticipate all that. I'm sure they put a lot of thought in the position of the delta formation, because the delta is a very cumbersome formation. So if for example, the lead in one delta got closer than he wanted to be to the other formation, you can't just move out of the way. You got to move in a fashion that you bring the entire six ship with you. So they would talk about how to rejoin, where to rejoin, what position they'll fly from. As you can saw, the supporting delta would take both lateral and vertical separation, which just gives an extra element of safety there. And then they would talk very extensively within their own formations about how to leave the formation. You're out, so to speak. So which way you can go out safely. And so it looks from us on the ground like a pretty benign flyby. Was that pretty extensive to brief and execute?
Who's in those slots in the delta? Who's got the most challenging job?
In the delta, the outriggers, the solos, for a couple reasons. The solos don't fly as much formation as the diamond pilots do, so they don't have as much experience. Now it's relative. They fly a lot of formation, but they join at the end of the shows typically, so they're probably not as used to flying that formation, and they're once removed from the lead, so they've got a little bit slower reaction time.
And I noticed, and I asked you about this earlier, we see from the Blue Angels cockpit, the F-18 cockpit, we see the pilot, and at some point it looks like in one of the turns he is really looking off to his left quite frequently. So, but he would normally reference the lead, correct? And then, so what was he looking at to his left, do you think?
Yeah, I loved that footage because it showed the sort of position of the slot and the viewpoint from the slot. And you can also see why the slot pilot is the primary instructor for a new lead pilot. So if you think about it, when the lead pilot comes in, who's going to sort of keep their eye on the lead, because the wingmen are focused very exclusively with their head in one direction. The slot pilot usually has that overall view. And so as you saw, you could see his head moving back and forth, a little bit in that slot formation. That position allows him to do that. So he'll reference himself based on lead and based on where the other wingmen are. And he'll also give them feedback. He's in the best position to give feedback on how the spacing goes. So that's part of why he's doing that. But the other part is, I noticed, like you did, when they go in that left turn, the Thunderbirds are out front a little bit of the Blues, and in that left turn, it looks like the Blues slide a little bit forward in the formation. And I suspect that's what's got his attention, is he's looking over, checking the position of the Thunderbirds, checking the position of his left side wingman in the formation.
And I guess the guys in the wings in the Delta really have to be on top of it because they have so much territory to cover if something changes.
Yeah, they do. And whatever changes you make, theirs is magnified. So if there's a little bit of a power up, they're going to need a little bit more power on the outside of the turn. They're going to need a little bit more flight control input. So it's both the combination of more input and the fact that they're once removed and slightly delayed on the outside of the pendulum there.
Well, it's pretty interesting to look at, and I appreciate your insight on it, Richard.
Yeah, I loved seeing it, as I think a lot of people did. They just looked great, didn't they? Both teams in formation. It was a fantastic sight.
They did. Thanks a lot. We've been speaking with Richard McSpadden, former commander of the Air Force Thunderbirds and now head of ASI at AOPA. Thanks.